Greetings, I'm Scott Jones from Utah State University, here to introduce soil sensors and sensing for the Vadozone Journal magazine. In categorizing soil sensors, Adamchuk and others in 2004 highlighted electrical and electromagnetic, optical and radiometric, mechanical, acoustic, pneumatic, and electrochemical. I point to the recent development by Acclima Incorporated of a shorter rod, TDR, with up to 2 gigahertz measurement frequency. There are spectroradiometers now that are drone mounted and field deployable, covering the full spectrum, that are giving us much better data in the field. And looking at optical and electrochemical sensors, there are a wide variety of gas measurements available now for field deployment, including CO2. Looking at the global soil moisture sensor market, it's expected to reach $264 million by 2023. Products include cosmic ray neutron probes that cover several hundred meters in area. The profiling arrays are electromagnetic. They can be variable length and variable sensor numbers along the profile. And then point sensors, the numbers of those globally are reaching probably 100 in terms of the options. And these will vary in the measurement frequency from gigahertz down to tens of megahertz in measurement frequency. In that sense, we're quite limited in most of our point scale measurement devices. A recent development by Cerament and others in 2020 is a frequency spectral measurement probe. This probe has 15 millimeter long central rod and 20 millimeter long outer rods. It's attached to a network analyzer and provides both real and imaginary permittivity as a function of this frequency spectrum. So this is another exciting advance in the world of sensors. In this edition of the magazine, we have presentations on thermo TDR. This addresses a larger probe design with improved sensor performance. This was published in Vadozone Journal, August 2019. The presentation will be by Yili Liu. The second paper addresses sensing CO2 in soil, looks at new technology with scalable measurements, and this was published in Vadozone Journal in June of 2019, and Detlef Lazik will give this presentation. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yili Liu from China Agricultural University. Today, I want to share my publication in 2019 on an improved thermal TDR sensor for monitoring soil thermal properties, water content, soil bulk density, and porosity. So I want to thank all my co-authors. So what is a thermal TDR sensor? So a thermal TDR sensor integrates the function of a heat pole sensor for measuring soil thermal properties, as well as integrates a TDR sensor for measuring soil water content. So we can see from this picture here that typically a thermal TDR sensor consists of 3 probes. So in the middle probe, it can release the heat pulse to heating the soil. And the other probes are the sensing probes that can get soil temperature measurements some distance away from the heater. So all these 3 probes are connected to the coaxial cables to get TDR waveforms. So from all these measurements, a thermal TDR sensor can get soil temperature, water content, soil thermal properties, dielectric constant, electrical conductivity, air-filled porosity, water saturation, porosity, and soil bulk density. So the most advantage of this type of sensor is that we can use it to get in situ and simultaneous readings with the same sampling volume. So the study objectives. We found that the original design has several weaknesses under field conditions. When we insert a probe into soil, because the probe radius is very thin, so the probe may deflect. And also its small sampling volume, and it also ignores the finite probe properties when estimating soil thermal properties. So in our study, we want to conquer these problems to develop a more rigid thermal TDR sensor design with a larger sampling volume, and also want to improve its measurement accuracies by including finite probe properties by integrating other theories. So this is our sensor design. You can see from this picture here, our sensor is much larger than the original design. With longer probe length, probe spacing, we have a very robust sensor with the very thick wall tubing. And also we put several thermocouples within one sensing probe to enable us to make the in situ corrections of the probe spacing. So we also found that the new sensor has a sensing volume about 3 times than the original design. We think it's a very big improvement compared to the original design. So for the experiment setup is that here is a circuit panel to control the thermal TDR sensor to release the heat pulse, and also the sensor can connect it to the cable tester or the TDR100 device. And all these measurements were made, and a data logger can automatically record these measurements like temperature rise by time data, and also it can record, say, TDR waveforms. So we update the data processing algorithms by estimating soil thermal properties from temperature measurements using the SAPC theory here, which accounts for finite probe radius and heat capacity. And we improve by estimating dielectric constant from TDR waveforms by integrating bounded mean escalation theory into our calculations. And we obtain the soil water content from top equation using the dielectric constant. And finally, soil bulk density can be obtained from these two measurements of soil thermal properties like soil heat capacity and thermal conductivity, as well as the TDR water content. Accordingly, soil porosity, air-filled porosity can be derived. This is the results. We tested the new thermal TDR sensor on 5 soils. We can see from this figure that the measured sensor measured volumetric heat capacity, thermal diffusivity, thermal conductivity is all showing very well results with the estimated values from the models. So we can also find the TDR water content results agrees very well with the actual values. And from the more accurate TDR water contents and soil thermal properties, we can get accurate soil bulk density, porosity, and air-filled porosity. We can see from this figure all these 3 parameters agrees very well with the actual values. So we conclude that the new sensor provides reliable measurements of soil water content, bulk density, porosity, and air-filled porosity. So we want to highlight that this new thermal TDR sensor is a very valuable tool for studying the coupled water, heat, and solute transport in non-rigid soils, where the soil bulk density may vary with time under field conditions. So thanks for your attention.
My name is Detlef Latzik. I work in the Department of Soil System Science at the Helmholtz Center for Environmental Research. Our name represents our scientific interest in a deep understanding of the diverse interactions in the habitat formed by a soil. Plants interact via their roots with the microorganisms, fungi, algae, and soil animals, which live in a soil in extreme diversity. Where life exists, nutrients and energy are needed. The oxygen diffusing into the soil is urgently needed by the communities living there to metabolize carbon-containing substrates. CO2 is formed as a result of this soil respiration. From local observation, we know that the respiration rate of the soil ecosystem depends on biotic and abiotic factors, such as the availability of easily convertible carbon sources, root penetration, temperature, the soil water content, soil aeration, and so on. If we know the amount of CO2 that is produced in the soil, we learn something about the living conditions in the soil. That is about its fertility and the health of the soil ecosystem. With this knowledge, new opportunities arise to better understand and specifically influence soil processes on larger scales. But how can we measure CO2 in the soil? The soil pores between the grains are tiny, and the soil properties vary strongly from one place to the next, even in a single field. And because properties such as temperature, water content, the nutrient availability vary in time, so will the local CO2 concentration of the soil. We therefore need to measure the average CO2 concentration of the soil over a relatively large area so that we sample a very large number of soil pores. In our article in Radiosone Journal, we present a CO2 sensor that consists of a flexible tube made of a material that allows gas to diffuse through it. We can bury this tube in the soil, purge it with air, seal it for a short time, and measure the pressure change during that time. By comparing this pressure change to that of a reference system for which we use a defined CO2 concentration inside of a second tube, we can derive the CO2 concentration in the soil averaged over the entire tube length. We can carry out these measurements at the end of the tube that stick out of the soil. We tested the sensor in several large soil containers planted with barley. We installed tubes at different depths and measured CO2 concentrations during the entire growth cycle of the barley every 2.2 minutes. Our container experiments were carried out under the same external conditions. Nevertheless, the growth rate of the barley varied between containers. It was astonishing for us to see how clearly the dynamics of the CO2 signal correlated with these differences. This means we were able to demonstrate that the measurement signal of this novel CO2 sensor indeed reflects the average soil CO2 concentration, and the signal is not dominated by local variations. By carefully choosing the length of the tube, we can use the CO2 readings to learn about carbon turnover and gas exchange in a soil area of any desirable size. Our open access article in Radiosone Journal is freely available. Megan Silver discussed this new technology in a featured article in the October 2019 CSA News. Thank you for your attention. My co-authors and I look forward to talking to you.